Spencer Gore stepped onto a grass court in London in 1877, paid his guinea entry fee, and entered what would become the most prestigious tournament in tennis history. 22 men competed, about 200 spectators watched, and tennis history was born on a patch of lawn that would become the most sacred ground in sports. This wasn't just another tennis tournament starting up. By 1877, Britain was the heart of the sporting world, and lawn tennis was the hot new game that everyone wanted to play. The All England Croquet Club was struggling financially and desperately needed something to bring in money. They'd heard about this new racket sport called lawn tennis, invented just a few years earlier as an outdoor version of the indoor game, and figured, why not organize a championship? They had the grass courts, they had the space, and they needed the cash. So they created what they boldly called the championships, not knowing they were establishing what would become the ultimate test in tennis. Here's where it gets incredible. That first tournament was supposed to last 5 days, but London's unpredictable weather kept washing out matches. Gore finally claimed his historic victory on July 19, 1877, defeating William Marshall in straight sets in just 48 minutes. The prize? A silver challenge cup valued at 25 guineas donated by the Field magazine, plus 12 guineas in prize money. Gore walked away with what would be worth about $4,000 today, but more importantly, he became the first name in a record book that would eventually include legends like Federer, Connors, Nadal, Serena Williams, and Djokovic. But here's what really changed everything. That name choice of the championships wasn't accidental. They genuinely believed this would become the ultimate tennis competition, and they were absolutely right. Within 7 years, they'd added women's singles in 1884 and men's doubles. The tournament exploded in popularity so fast that by 1922, they had to abandon their original Whirlpool Road location and move to a massive new site on Church Road, where Wimbledon still sits today. The real game changer came in 1968, when Wimbledon opened its doors to professional players for the first time, launching what's called the Open Era. Suddenly, the best players in the world could compete for the sport's most coveted prize instead of being banned for earning money from tennis. This decision transformed tennis forever. Prize money exploded from hundreds of pounds to millions of dollars. Television coverage turned matches into global events watched by hundreds of millions. Players started training year-round just for a chance to win on those grass courts. Wimbledon didn't just become the most important tournament in tennis. It became the tournament that defined what professional tennis could be. And here's something that'll blow your mind about Wimbledon's influence. They're still the only Grand Slam played on grass, the original surface of tennis. While the US Open switched to hard courts and the Australian Open followed suit, Wimbledon refused to change. They kept their grass courts, their strict all-white dress code, their strawberries and cream tradition, and their royal ceremonies. This stubbornness turned out to be genius because it made Wimbledon completely unique in the tennis world. The numbers tell the story of Wimbledon's dominance. Roger Federer, who won a record 8 Wimbledon titles, called them his most treasured achievements. Serena Williams said winning Wimbledon felt different from any other tournament. When Novak Djokovic won his first Wimbledon in 2011, he celebrated by eating grass from center court, something he'd never done at any other tournament, showing just how special this place is. But Wimbledon's real power isn't in the trophies or the prize money, it's in the dreams it creates. Every tennis player, from weekend warriors to future pros, has imagined walking onto center court and hearing their name announced to the crowd. Wimbledon represents the pinnacle of the sport, the place where tennis legends are born and careers are defined. The tournament that started with 22 men and 200 spectators now attracts over 500,000 fans. During its 2 weeks, generates over $400 million in economic impact, and broadcast to more than 1 billion viewers worldwide. Spencer Gore's little tennis tournament became the most watched, most prestigious, and most influential event in tennis history. But wait until you hear what happened when France created their own tennis championship, and how they accidentally built the most physically demanding and mentally crushing tournament in tennis, where even the greatest champions have been reduced to tears on courts made of crushed brick and clay. If you're loving this video, subscribe now and help us hit 5,000 tennis fans by month's end. In 1891, French tennis officials created what started as a modest national championship exclusively for French club members. They had no idea they were planting the seeds of what would become the most physically brutal and mentally devastating tournament in tennis. A place where champions are broken, legends are made, and the red clay courts have witnessed more tears than any other venue in sports. For 34 years, this tournament remained France's exclusive competition. Only French players could compete, making it more of a regional club championship than a serious international event. But everything changed in 1925 when 4 French players started dominating tennis worldwide. René Lacoste, Jean Barotra, Henri Cochet, and Jacques Brunon became known as the Four Musketeers. And suddenly France had the best tennis players on the planet. Here's where it gets incredible. The French Tennis Federation realized they had a golden opportunity. In 1925, they opened their tournament to international players for the first time, transforming it into a true Grand Slam championship. Tennis would never be the same. They needed a new venue worthy of their global ambitions. So they built a stadium, naming it after Roland Garros, a French World War I fighter pilot and aviation pioneer who had become a national hero. But the real genius was the surface they chose. Red clay, made from crushed brick, tile, and stone. This wasn't an accident. Clay courts slowed down the ball dramatically, create unpredictable high bounces, and turn every point into a grueling battle of endurance. While grass courts at Wimbledon reward quick points and aggressive net play, clay courts punish pure power players and reward patience, strategy, and incredible physical fitness. The impact was immediate and brutal. Players who dominated on other surfaces suddenly looked ordinary on clay. The tournament became a completely different test, not just of tennis skill, but of mental toughness and physical endurance. Matches that would last 2 hours on hard courts stretched to 4 or 5 hours on clay. Players started cramping, collapsing, and breaking down in ways never seen before in tennis. This created something unique in sports, a tournament where being the best player in the world meant nothing if you couldn't handle the clay. Champions like John McEnroe, Stefan Edberg, and Pete Sampras, legends who dominated everywhere else, never won the French Open. McEnroe reached the final in 1984 but lost to Ivan Lendl. Sampras, despite 14 Grand Slam titles, never even reached a final here. The clay courts exposed every weakness, every mental flaw, every physical limitation. Then came Rafael Nadal, and the French Open found its king. Starting with his first victory in 2005, this Spanish left-hander turned the tournament into his personal kingdom. Nadal didn't just win, he demolished opponents with a combination of heavy topspin, incredible speed, and relentless intensity that seemed designed specifically for clay courts. His record through 2024? 14 titles and an almost impossible 1-on-12 wins against just 4 losses. Only 4 players beat him: Soderling in 2009, Djokovic in 2015 and 2021, and Zverev in 2024. But here's what makes Nadal's dominance even more incredible. He beat the greatest players of all time on this surface. In 2008, he destroyed Roger Federer 6-1, 6-3, 6-0 in a final so one-sided that Federer, one of the greatest champions in tennis history, looked like he'd never played tennis before. That match showed the world just how different and demanding clay court tennis really is. The French Open became the tournament that separated the good from the great. Winning here meant you could handle anything tennis could throw at you. Players like Bjorn Borg, who won 6 French Opens in the 1970s and early 80s, and Chris Evert, who won 7 between 1974 and 1986, became legends specifically because they mastered the mental and physical torture of clay court tennis. When the US Open switched to hard courts, the French Open has been the only Grand Slam played on clay, making it completely unique. The tournament is widely regarded as the most physically demanding in tennis, requiring 7 rounds of best-of-5 set matches for men on the slowest surface in the sport. The numbers tell the story of this tournament's unique brutality. Matches regularly last over 4 hours. Players lose significant weight from sweating in the Paris heat and humidity. The clay surface creates rallies that average 30% longer than on any other surface. It's not just tennis, it's a test of human endurance disguised as a sport. Today, the French Open attracts hundreds of thousands of spectators who come to witness this annual test of human endurance. The red clay courts have become synonymous with the ultimate challenge in tennis, a place where only the mentally strongest and physically toughest players can survive. The tournament that started as France's exclusive club competition became the most feared and respected championship in tennis, where legends prove their greatness against the most unforgiving surface in the sport. But if you think clay courts are tough, wait until you hear about the tournament that takes place in the blazing Australian summer, where extreme heat policies had to be created because players were literally collapsing on court. In 1905, 17 men showed up to the Warehousemen's Cricket Ground in Melbourne for what organizers called the Australasian Championships. Rodney Heath defeated Arthur Curtis to become the first champion, collecting a modest prize and having no idea he'd just won what would become the most attended Grand Slam in tennis history. But this tournament's journey to greatness would be the most chaotic and unpredictable story in tennis. Here's the crazy part. For the first 83 years, nobody could figure out where to hold this tournament. It bounced around like a tennis ball between 5 Australian cities and even 2 cities in New Zealand. Melbourne hosted it the most times, Sydney 17 times, Adelaide 15 times, Brisbane 7 times, Perth 3 times, and it even went to Christchurch in 1906 and Hastings in 1912 in New Zealand. Imagine trying to build tradition when your tournament moves cities more often than a traveling circus. The real problem was Australia's brutal geography. When the tournament was held in Perth, not a single player from Victoria or New South Wales made the 3,000-kilometer train journey across the continent. In 1906 in Christchurch, only 10 players entered, and just 2 were Australian. The tournament was won by a New Zealander, Anthony Wilding. This wasn't a Grand Slam. It was a regional competition that happened to call itself a championship, but geography wasn't the only enemy. The tournament dates were completely insane. Sometimes it was held in November, sometimes January, sometimes March. There was even a year, 1977, when they held the tournament twice, once in January and once in December because they couldn't figure out the best timing. Players had no idea when to show up, and most of the world's best players simply didn't bother. The isolation was so severe that tennis legends like Bill Tilden, René Lacoste, Henri Cochet, and even Bjorn Borg rarely or never played the Australian Championships. Many of the world's greatest players avoided the long journey to Australia, especially before jet travel made the trip more manageable. Even some top Australian players found it difficult to consistently participate due to the tournament's unstable scheduling and locations. Everything changed in 1902 when organizers made a crucial decision. Melbourne would be the permanent host city because it attracted the biggest crowds. Then came the move that transformed tennis history. In 1988, the tournament relocated from the intimate Kooyong Lawn Tennis Club to a massive new complex called Flinders Park, later renamed Melbourne Park. The impact was immediate and stunning. Attendance jumped 90% in the first year from 140,000 to 266,006 spectators. But here's where the Australian Open got really smart. They embraced what made them different instead of fighting it. The January timing, which had been a curse, became their greatest advantage. While other Grand Slams competed with established sports seasons, the Australian Open owned January. They marketed themselves as the Happy Slam, a laid-back, fun tournament where players and fans could enjoy tennis in the Australian summer. The surface change in 1988 from grass to hard courts was revolutionary. They chose rebound days, a cushioned surface that was faster than clay but slower than grass, creating a perfect middle ground. When they switched to plexicushion in 2008 and then green set in 2020, they kept innovating while other tournaments stayed traditional. Then came the heat factor that made the Australian Open uniquely brutal. Melbourne's summer temperatures regularly soar above 40 degrees C, 140 WF, creating conditions so extreme that the tournament had to create the first ever extreme heat policy in the 1990s. Players have collapsed, retired mid-match, and literally suffered from heat exhaustion on court. In 2014, temperatures hit 42 degrees C and multiple players withdrew from heat-related issues. But instead of seeing this as a problem, the Australian Open turned extreme conditions into part of their identity. Surviving the Australian heat became a badge of honor. Players who could handle Melbourne's furnace-like conditions proved they had the mental and physical toughness to win anywhere. The numbers tell the story of this incredible transformation. The tournament that once attracted 10 players in Christchurch now draws over 800,000 spectators across 2 weeks, making it the most attended Grand Slam in the world. Prize money has exploded to over $86 million Australian dollars, and the economic impact on Victoria exceeds $400 million annually. Novak Djokovic found his home here, winning a record 10 Australian Open titles and calling Melbourne his favorite city. The Serbian champion has dominated like no other player at this tournament, winning in 2008, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2015, 2016, 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2023. The tournament that couldn't find a permanent home became the most successful Grand Slam at creating a welcoming, festival-like atmosphere while maintaining the brutal challenge of extreme heat and world-class competition. But wait until you hear about the tournament that became America's answer to Wimbledon and how they accidentally created the loudest, most intense, and most unpredictable 2 weeks in tennis. In 1881, 19 men gathered at the Newport Casino in Rhode Island for the first U.S. National Championships. Richard Sears defeated William Glynn 6-0, 6-3, 6-2 to become America's first tennis champion, winning a Silver Challenge Cup and medal. Nobody knew they were starting what would become the most unpredictable, loudest, and most brutal test of mental toughness in tennis, a tournament that would break champions and create legends in the concrete jungle of New York City. For 34 years, the tournament stayed at the elegant Newport Casino, attracting America's tennis elite to manicured grass courts overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. But in 1915, organizers made a decision that would change tennis forever. They moved the championships to the West Side Tennis Club in Forest Hills, Queens, bringing America's premier tennis tournament into the orbit of New York City. The energy, the crowds, and the intensity would never be the same. Here's where the U.S. Open became revolutionary. When tennis entered the Open era, allowing professionals to compete, the U.S. Open didn't just adapt, they innovated. They became the first Grand Slam to offer equal prize money to men and women in 1973, a groundbreaking decision that was decades ahead of other tournaments. While Wimbledon waited until 2007 to achieve pay equality, America was already leading the charge for fairness in tennis. But the real game changer came in 1978 when the tournament moved to its current home at Flushing Meadows in Queens. The surface journey was wild. They switched from grass to clay courts in 1975, then made the revolutionary move to hard courts in 1978 with the introduction of DecoTurf. This wasn't just a surface change, it was a complete transformation of tennis strategy. Hard courts played faster than clay, but more predictably than grass, creating a surface that rewarded power, aggression, and mental toughness above all else. The move to Flushing Meadows turned the U.S. Open into something completely unique in tennis, a tournament played in the heart of America's most intense city. The crowds became louder, more passionate, and more demanding than anywhere else in tennis. Unlike the polite applause at Wimbledon or the partisan but respectful crowds at Roland Garros, New York crowds brought pure American energy. They cheered, they booed, they created an atmosphere that could lift players to incredible heights or crush them completely. Then came the innovation that changed tennis forever: night matches under the lights. Starting in 1905, the US Open became the first Grand Slam to regularly schedule evening sessions, creating a completely different tennis experience. Under the bright lights of what would become Arthur Ashe Stadium, with 23,071 screaming fans creating a wall of sound, tennis became a theater. Players had to handle not just their opponents, but the most intense atmosphere in sports. The numbers tell the story of this transformation. Jimmy Connors, the ultimate New York crowd favorite, won the US Open 5 times and turned his matches into emotional roller coasters that had fans on their feet for hours. John McEnroe, the bad boy of tennis, found his perfect stage at the US Open, where his explosive personality matched the city's energy. His 1980 final against Bjorn Borg became legendary not just for the tennis, but for the pure drama and intensity that only New York could provide. But here's what makes the US Open truly brutal. It comes at the end of the tennis season when players are physically and mentally exhausted. After months of competition, players arrive in New York knowing this is their last chance for Grand Slam glory. The desperation, the fatigue, and the pressure create a perfect storm of intensity that produces the most unpredictable results in tennis. The surface itself became a weapon. The hard courts at Flushing Meadows play faster than other hard court tournaments, rewarding aggressive players who can handle the pace and pressure. Players like Pete Sampras thrived here, winning 5 US Opens with his powerful serve and volley game perfectly suited to the fast courts. Serena Williams found her home court advantage, winning 6 US Opens and creating some of the most memorable moments in tennis history. The US Open also became the tournament of breakthrough champions and shocking upsets. Emma Raducanu's 2021 victory as a qualifier remains one of the most stunning achievements in sports history. She won the tournament without dropping a single set. Teenage champions like Tracy Austin, who won at 16 in 1979, and Pete Sampras, who claimed his first major at 19 in 1990, announced themselves to the world at Flushing Meadows. The tournament's late-season timing and intense atmosphere created the perfect conditions for career-defining moments. Today, the US Open generates over $400 million in economic impact for New York City and attracts over 700,000 spectators during its 2 weeks. The prize money has reached $65 million, making it one of the richest tournaments in sports. But the real prize isn't money. It's surviving the most intense 2 weeks in tennis and proving you can handle anything the sport can throw at you. The tournament that started with 19 gentlemen on grass courts in Newport became the ultimate test of mental toughness, where only the strongest minds and biggest hearts can triumph in the chaos and intensity of New York City tennis. From Wimbledon's elegant traditions to Roland Garros's clay court brutality, from Australia's extreme heat to America's concrete jungle intensity, these 4 tournaments don't just crown tennis champions. They test every aspect of human performance and create the legends that define our sport. Each Grand Slam demands something different, but together they form the ultimate challenge in tennis. And that's why winning all 4 remains the greatest achievement in sports. If you love this video, subscribe now and help us hit 5,000 tennis fans by month's end.